homes of private citizens. Campus Reform's Nicholas Giordano is with me now. Why would anyone be okay with a government camera in their house?
Well, it's due to a failed education system that hasn't actually educated students on the importance of American history and our God-given rights and liberties. Unfortunately, we see real-world examples. So during the coronavirus pandemic, the young Americans didn't question the lockdowns, the mask and vaccine mandates, the school closures, and it inhibited their learning and social growth. So you see the examples of that. And I have students, 86% of them can't distinguish between the American Constitution and the Russian Constitution. Unfortunately, it actually gets worse on the college campuses because you have free speech zones that think that they could relegate the First Amendment to little campus geographical boxes. And then you have bias reporting systems. In campus reform, we've been reporting heavily on these bias reporting systems where students make frivolous complaints about opinions that they deem offensive. And you have professors coming out saying, hey, this is an attack on our First Amendment.
But young folks live on screens, live with cameras. And some of them presumably want cameras from the government in their homes for security reasons. Do you think that's valid?
Well, if we look at the bias reporting systems, because I think it's the great example. I mean, and again, we go to a pandemic. You had the governor of Oregon talking about how residents should inform and rat out other residents that are violating any COVID rules. We saw the same thing here in New York City. So what you're seeing is an entire generation growing up thinking that government is the be-all, end-all, that government is something that they should be obedient and compliant to, where in American values, we respect government, but we question government and governmental powers. They seem to think, the younger generations, that government's the answer to everything.
Of course, it is traditional that older folks, like myself, look at the younger generation and are critical. Every older generation is critical of the younger generation, and this is no different.
It's no different, and to a certain degree. However, if we bury our heads in the sand and ignore this, the trend actually gets worse. Orwell's 1984 comes closer to reality. And we have to do two simple things. One, fix the education system. Make history and civics separate courses. Make them mandatory from 9th grade to 12th grade so they could actually pass a citizenship exam. And then at the college level, we need to start looking at cutting the funding. Any university, any institution that is going to deny people their First Amendment rights, that's going to violate our Constitution, why should taxpayers have to fund something like that? Those two simple things can actually go a long way in reversing this trend and bringing that 29% of Gen Zers maybe down to about 5%.
Well, I don't think we're going to have government cameras in private homes, but we do have those things called Nest, is it, or other cameras that are up there?
All those other cameras. But I would say prior to 2020, I may agree with that. However, after seeing everything that took place during the pandemic, I'm really concerned that there's so many people that just blindly obey without asking questions.
Interesting. Nicholas Giordano, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Here's what's still ahead. Brett Tolman on John Durham's testimony on Russiagate. He says it's going to take time to rebuild our confidence in the FBI. Super Bowl